Hello, everyone. Before we get started, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on stories like this one. It means the world to me, and it'll keep you in the loop for more real-life tales of heartbreak, triumph, and everything in between. Alright, let's dive into my story. My name is Seraphina Holt, and I'm 62 years old. I know what you're thinking. 62 sounds like the age where you're supposed to have life all figured out. Maybe you're picturing me with a cozy retirement, grandkids climbing all over me, or sipping chamomile tea on a porch swing somewhere. That's what I thought my life would look like too. But let me tell you something. Life has a way of ripping up the script you wrote for it and handing you a plot twist you never saw coming. For me, that plot twist came when the man I loved, the man I built my entire world around for decades, walked out the door without so much as a backward glance. After all those years, he abandoned me. And what I did next? Well, my comeback left everyone speechless. My friends, my family, even myself. But to understand how I got there, to that moment of jaw-dropping triumph, you need to know where it all began. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. My parents were high school sweethearts, and I was raised on stories of love that lasts forever. So when I met Daniel at 22, I thought I'd found my own forever. He was charming, with this warm smile that could light up a room, and he had dreams bigger than our little town. He wanted to build a life, a legacy, and I believed in him. We got married 2 years later, in a little church with roses blooming outside, and I promised to stand by his side no matter what. I meant every word. For the next 35 years, that's exactly what I did. I supported Daniel through everything. When he wanted to start his own business, I was the one balancing the books at night, making sure we didn't lose everything. When he got stressed and distant, I was the one cooking his favorite meals, trying to bring him back to me. We built a life together. A beautiful house in the suburbs, a garden I spent hours tending, and a circle of friends who thought we were the perfect couple. Sure, we had our fights like any couple, but I always believed we were solid. Unbreakable. I poured my heart into being the wife he needed, the partner he could rely on. I gave up pieces of myself, my own dreams of traveling, of maybe starting a little art studio, because I thought that's what love was. Sacrifice. Commitment. Forever. But forever, it turns out, was only forever for me. About a year ago, just after our 35th wedding anniversary, Daniel came home from work one evening and sat me down at our kitchen table. I remember it so clearly. The way the light was fading outside, the smell of the lasagna I'd made still lingering in the air. He looked at me, his eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before, and said, "Seraphina, I'm leaving. I don't love you anymore." Just like that. No warning, no explanation, no apology. He said he'd met someone else, a woman named Claire, 20 years younger than me, someone he worked with. He said she made him feel alive again, like he was starting over. And me? I was just the past. A chapter he was ready to close. I sat there, stunned, as he packed a suitcase and walked out. I didn't cry, not at first. I think I was too shocked to feel anything. The man I'd given my life to, the man I'd built everything with, had just thrown it all away like it meant nothing. Our marriage, our home, our memories, it was all disposable to him. I spent that first night alone in our big quiet house, staring at the walls, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was I not enough? Had I missed something? The questions tore at me, but the silence was worse. It was like the life I'd known had vanished, leaving me with nothing but echoes. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain. I'd wake up every morning hoping it was a bad dream, but the empty side of the bed told me otherwise. Friends tried to help, bringing casseroles and kind words, but nothing filled the hole Daniel left. I'd see him around town sometimes, with Claire, laughing like he'd never been happier. Each time felt like a knife twisting in my chest. People would whisper, "Poor Seraphina, how's she holding up?" And I hated it. I hated being the victim, the woman everyone pitied. I'd spent my life being strong for Daniel, for our family, for everyone else. But now, I didn't know who I was anymore. One night, about 3 months after he left, I was sitting in my living room, staring at a photo of us from our 25th anniversary. We were smiling, arms around each other, and I looked so happy. So naive. I started crying, not just for the loss, but for the woman I'd let myself become. Someone who'd given everything to a man who didn't value it. That's when something shifted inside me. I was done crying. Done feeling sorry for myself. Done being poor Seraphina. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to let Daniel's betrayal define the rest of my life. If he thought he could walk away and leave me broken, he was wrong. I was going to take back my power, my story, my life. And I was going to do it in a way that would make him regret ever thinking he could discard me. The first step wasn't glamorous. It was small, but it felt like a rebellion. I started going through our house, clearing out anything that reminded me of him. His old golf clubs? Donated. The recliner he loved? Sold. The photos of us on tropical vacations, back when I thought we were happy. Boxed up and tucked away. I wasn't erasing him to forget him. I was doing it to make space for me. For the Seraphina I'd buried under years of being Daniel's wife. I started asking myself questions I hadn't asked in decades. What do I want? What makes me happy? Who am I when I'm not someone's wife? Those questions led me to my old sketchbooks, tucked away in a dusty corner of the attic. When I was younger, before Daniel, I used to draw. I dreamed of being an artist, of filling galleries with my work. But life got in the way. Marriage, bills, responsibilities. I'd let that dream fade, convincing myself it was impractical. But now, with no one to tell me what I could or couldn't do, I pulled out those sketchbooks and started drawing again. At first, it was just a way to process the pain. Angry, jagged lines, dark colors that matched the storm in my heart. But soon it became something else. A spark. A purpose. I signed up for an art class at the local community center, something I hadn't done since my 20s. I was nervous, walking into a room full of strangers, most of them younger than me. But the teacher, a kind woman named Maria, saw something in my work. She encouraged me to keep going, to push myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something for me. Not for Daniel, not for anyone else. Just for Seraphina. I started painting, pouring my heart onto the canvas. My pain, my anger, but also my hope. Each stroke felt like I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece. Word started spreading about my art. A local cafe asked to display one of my paintings, a vibrant piece I called Shades of Resilience. It sold within a week. Then another piece sold and another. People started asking about the artist behind the work, and when they found out it was me, a 62-year-old woman who'd just gone through a devastating divorce, they were stunned. "You're so inspiring," they'd say. "How did you do this?" And I'd smile and tell them, I just decided to start living for myself. But that was only the beginning. I wasn't just painting to heal. I was painting to prove a point. Daniel thought he could abandon me, replace me with someone younger, someone better. He thought I'd fade away, become a footnote in his new life. But I was done letting him write my story. I was going to show him, and everyone else, that Seraphina Holt was just getting started. I started planning something bigger, something that would shake up his world the way he'd shaken mine. It wasn't about hurting him. It was about showing him what he'd lost. And trust me, my comeback was going to leave everyone speechless. So there I was, standing in the middle of a life I barely recognized anymore. My paintings were starting to turn heads, and for the first time in decades, I felt a flicker of who I used to be. The woman with dreams, with fire, with a spark that hadn't been snuffed out by years of putting someone else first. Daniel thought he could just walk away and leave me to fade into the background of his shiny new life with Claire. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. My comeback wasn't just about rebuilding myself. It was about showing him and everyone else that I was more than the woman he abandoned. It was about taking back my power in a way that would make jaws drop. That first sale at the cafe, Shades of Resilience, was like a match being struck in the dark. It lit something up inside me. I started painting more, spending hours in my little makeshift studio in the spare bedroom. The walls were covered with canvases, some angry, some hopeful, all raw. Each one felt like a piece of me coming back to life. Maria, my art teacher, kept pushing me. "Seraphina," she'd say, "your work has a voice. Let it scream." And I did. I painted my heartbreak, my rage, my rediscovery of myself. People started noticing. The local art scene in our small Ohio town wasn't exactly Paris, but it was something. A gallery owner named Rachel reached out after seeing my work at the cafe. She invited me to a small group exhibition, and I said yes before I could overthink it. Walking into that gallery for the first time, I felt like a fraud. I was surrounded by artists half my age, all of them talking about their process and inspirations like they'd been doing this forever. Me. I was just a 62-year-old woman who'd picked up a paintbrush again because her husband decided she wasn't enough. But when I saw people stopping in front of my paintings, whispering to each other, pointing at the bold strokes and vibrant colors, I started to believe maybe I had something to say. By the end of the night, 2 more of my pieces had sold, and Rachel pulled me aside. "Seraphina," she said, "you've got talent. Real talent. Have you ever thought about doing a solo show?" "A solo show? Me?" I laughed it off at first. I mean, come on, I was just trying to survive, not become some art world star. But Rachel was serious. She saw something in me that I was only beginning to see in myself. So I said yes. I didn't know it then, but that decision was the first step toward something much bigger. Something that would turn my quiet comeback into a full-on roar. Over the next few months, I threw myself into my art like never before. I'd wake up at dawn, paint until my hands ached, and fall into bed exhausted but alive. It wasn't just about the art, though. It was about proving to myself, and to Daniel, that I wasn't the woman he thought he could discard. Every time I heard through the grapevine that he and Claire were out at some fancy dinner or planning a trip to Europe, it fueled me. I wasn't bitter. Not exactly. It was more like determination. I wanted him to see what he'd lost, not by begging for his attention, but by becoming someone he could never ignore. I started getting to know the art community too. I met other artists, collectors, even a few critics who came through town. They'd ask about my story, and I'd give them the short version. I'm 62, started painting again after a tough divorce, and here I am. They loved it. They called me inspiring, a late bloomer, a testament to resilience. I didn't feel like any of those things, not yet, but their words gave me courage. I started posting my work on social media, something I'd never done before. My daughter, Emily, who's 30 and lives in Chicago, helped me set up an Instagram account. At first, I felt silly. Me, a grandmother, posting pictures of my paintings for the world to see? But Emily insisted. "Mom," she said, "people need to see this. You're not just painting, you're telling a story." She was right. My post started getting attention. People left comments like, "This is so powerful," or "You're an inspiration." I even got messages from other women, some my age, some younger, who'd gone through their own heartbreaks. They told me my art made them feel seen, like they could start over too. That meant more to me than any sale. But the sales kept coming. Rachel helped me get my work into a few more galleries, and before I knew it, I was preparing for my first solo exhibition. It was set to happen in 6 months, at a gallery in Columbus. A bigger stage than I'd ever imagined. Now, here's where things get interesting. Word about my art started spreading beyond our little town. A journalist from a regional magazine reached out to do a feature on me. They called it The Renaissance of Seraphina Holt. I laughed at the title. It sounded so grand, but I agreed to the interview. I told them about my life, my marriage, Daniel's betrayal, and how I'd found myself again through my art. I didn't hold back. I wanted the world to know I wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed. The article came out and it was a hit. People shared it online, and suddenly, my Instagram was blowing up. I went from a few hundred followers to thousands almost overnight. That's when I heard Daniel had seen it. A mutual friend, Linda, told me he'd been at a coffee shop, scrolling through his phone, when he came across the article. Apparently, he looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Good. I wasn't doing this for him, but I won't lie. It felt satisfying to know he was starting to see me in a new light. Not as the wife he abandoned, but as Seraphina Holt, the artist. The woman who didn't need him to shine. But I wasn't done yet. The solo exhibition was coming up, and I wanted it to be more than just a show. I wanted it to be a statement. I started working on a new series of paintings, my most ambitious yet. I called it Unbroken. Each piece was a chapter of my life. My youth, my marriage, the betrayal, and the woman I was becoming. The centerpiece was a massive canvas, 6 feet tall, that I poured everything into. It was bold, raw, and unapologetic, with colors that screamed defiance and hope. I wanted anyone who saw it to feel what I'd felt. The pain, yes, but also the power of rising above it. As the exhibition date got closer, I started hearing whispers that Daniel was struggling. His business, the one I'd helped build, wasn't doing so well. Claire, it seemed, wasn't as interested in playing supportive partner as I had been. She was younger, sure, but she wasn't willing to put in the work to keep things afloat. I didn't gloat, not out loud anyway, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like justice. He'd made his choice, and now he was living with it. Meanwhile, I was building something new, something that was mine alone. The night of the exhibition arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. The gallery was packed. Friends, family, strangers, even some local media. Emily flew in from Chicago to be there, and seeing her proud smile gave me the strength to walk through that door. My paintings lined the walls, each one telling a piece of my story. People moved through the space, some wiping tears, others nodding like they understood. The centerpiece, Unbroken, stopped people in their tracks. I overheard one woman whisper to her friend, "This is what it looks like to take your life back." Halfway through the night, Rachel pulled me aside. "Seraphina," she said, her eyes wide. "There's someone here from a gallery in New York. They want to talk to you about showing your work there." New York. I could barely process it. Me, a small-town Ohio woman, getting a chance to show my art in New York? It felt like a dream. But it was real, and it was happening because I'd chosen to fight for myself instead of staying broken. As the night went on, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in my art but in me. In the woman who'd refused to let heartbreak define her. But I wasn't done yet. The real shock, the moment that would leave everyone, especially Daniel, speechless, was still brewing. I'd been planning something big, something that would show the world, and him, that I wasn't just surviving his betrayal. I was thriving, and I was doing it on my terms. That night was a turning point. A moment where I felt like I was finally stepping into the spotlight of my own life. The gallery buzzed with people, their voices blending into a hum of admiration for my paintings, my story, my resilience. My daughter Emily's proud smile, the whispers of strangers moved by my work, the offer from a New York gallery. It was all surreal. I'd gone from being the woman Daniel abandoned to someone who was building something extraordinary. But the New York gallery offer was a dream, not the endgame. I wanted more, not just for myself, but for every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't enough. I wanted to turn my pain into something that would outlast me, something that would echo far beyond our small Ohio town. That's when the idea hit me, the one that would become my ultimate act of triumph. Not the petty kind, but the kind that rewrites your story so boldly it overshadows anyone who tried to dim your light. I started working on a project I called Unbroken Voices. It wasn't just about my art anymore. It was about giving other women a platform to tell their stories through creativity. I reached out to the women who'd messaged me on Instagram, the ones who'd seen themselves in my paintings, who'd shared their own stories of heartbreak and survival. I invited them to join me in creating a collaborative art exhibition, one that would showcase not just my work, but theirs, paintings, poems, sculptures, anything that expressed their journey. The idea was simple but powerful. We'd take our pain and turn it into something beautiful, something undeniable. I poured everything into making Unbroken Voices a reality. I partnered with Rachel, the gallery owner, who was thrilled at the idea of a show that celebrated women reclaiming their power. We found a space in Columbus, bigger than the one where I'd had my solo show, and started planning. I spent months mentoring these women, helping them find their creative voices. There was Lisa, a 55-year-old nurse who'd been left by her husband of 30 years, who started writing poetry that made us all cry. There was Amara, a 40-year-old single mom who painted vibrant abstracts that screamed defiance. Each woman brought something unique, and together, we were building something unstoppable. As the project grew, so did the buzz. The local media picked up the story, and soon, national outlets were calling. A women's magazine featured us in an article titled, "The Unbroken: Women Reclaiming Their Stories Through Art." My Instagram following skyrocketed, and suddenly, Unbroken Voices was more than an exhibition. It was a movement. People started using the hashtag Unbroken Voices to share their own stories online, not just women, but anyone who'd ever felt discarded and fought their way back. I was overwhelmed, but in the best way. For the first time, I felt like I was living for something bigger than myself. But here's where the comeback gets good. I'd heard through the grapevine that Daniel's life was unraveling. His business, the one I'd helped build, was struggling. Claire, his younger girlfriend, had left him when things got tough. Apparently, she wasn't interested in sticking around for the hard times, unlike me, who'd held his hand through every storm. He was back to living in a small apartment, a far cry from the life we'd built together. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness for him. He was human after all, but mostly, I felt free. Free from the weight of his choices. Free to be the woman I was always meant to be. I decided it was time to face him, not out of anger, but to close the chapter for good. I invited Daniel to the Unbroken Voices exhibition. I didn't expect him to come, but I sent the invitation anyway, through a mutual friend. I wanted him to see what I'd built without him, to witness the life I'd created from the ashes of his betrayal. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery was electric. Over 100 people showed up. Artists, supporters, media, even a few big names from the art world. My paintings hung alongside the work of 20 other women, each piece a testament to survival. The air was thick with emotion, with pride, with possibility. And then there he was. Daniel walked through the door, looking older, smaller than I remembered. He stood in front of my centerpiece, Unbroken, the same painting that had stopped people in their tracks at my solo show. I watched him from across the room as he read the plaque beside it, which told my story. Not just the pain of his leaving, but the triumph of what came after. His face was unreadable, but I saw his shoulders slump, like the weight of it all was hitting him. I didn't approach him at first. I let him walk through the gallery, let him see the other women's work, let him feel the power of what we'd created. Finally, I walked over. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady. He turned, and for a moment, he looked like the man I'd married all those years ago. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "I'm glad you came," I told him. "This is what I've been doing since you left. This is who I am now." He tried to say something, maybe an apology, but I held up my hand. "You don't need to say anything. Just look around. This is my life now and I'm happy." And I meant it. I walked away, leaving him standing there, surrounded by the art and stories of women who refused to be broken. That night, Unbroken Voices was a massive success. We sold nearly every piece, and the funds went to a charity that supports women rebuilding their lives after trauma. The New York Gallery reached out again, offering me a solo show, and this time, I said yes without hesitation. But more than that, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I'd taken my pain and turned it into something beautiful, something that lifted others up. I wasn't just Seraphina Holt, the woman Daniel abandoned. I was Seraphina Holt, the artist, the mentor, the woman who'd built a legacy of her own. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Daniel. He wrote that he was sorry, that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, that he was proud of me. I read it once, then tucked it away. I didn't need his approval anymore. I'd already found my own. My daughter Emily moved closer to home, and we started spending more time together, painting, laughing, rebuilding our bond. My art took me to places I'd never dreamed of: New York, Chicago, even a small show in Paris. But the real victory wasn't the galleries or the headlines. It was the woman I saw in the mirror every morning. Strong, vibrant, unbroken. Looking back, I realized that Daniel abandoning me was the best thing that ever happened. It forced me to rediscover myself, to fight for the life I deserved. My comeback wasn't about hurting him. It was about becoming someone he could never have, someone who didn't need him to shine. And in doing that, I inspired others to do the same. Unbroken Voices is still growing, with exhibitions planned across the country, and I'm at the heart of it, not just as an artist, but as a woman who refused to let betrayal define her. So, here I am, 62 years old, living a life I never could have imagined. If you're out there, feeling like your story's been written for you, like you've been left behind, let me tell you this: you're not done. Your pain is not your ending. It's the beginning of something extraordinary, if you're willing to fight for it. I did, and I'm still here painting, creating, living. And I'm just getting started. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more stories with you. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing in the power of starting over. Until next time, keep shining.